Namaskar. It's my pleasure to have Lieutenant General Ravi Shankar with me on a hangout that is very close to my heart. What is happening between India and the United States in terms of communications since the Biden administration took hold. And this is going to be a free flowing conversation. We may agree on a few things, we may disagree on a few things. At the end of it, you're going to get a good perspective from two different individuals. And I'm hoping that General Ravi Shankar is going to be free and frank with his thoughts. General Ravi Shankar, namaskar and welcome to P Guru's channel.
Namaskaram, thanks a lot. I'm looking forward to this free flow of thoughts on the Indo-US relationship and where we're going to go.
And to kind of take a look forward, I'd like to take us back to perhaps the waning months of the Trump administration. You had China breathing down India's neck, and this is reliable sources, and I'm only going to attribute these to my sources, nothing to do with General
Yeah.
Ravi Shankar. That is that in April 20th, on April 20th, 2020, the Chinese had amassed troops along the LAC, and someone told the Indian defense people, or I wouldn't say defense people, but the decision making people, that they are standing on the line, but they're not going to come inside. And this evidently came from their friends in Russia. Be that as it may be, India also had independent intelligence input that there is going to be problem. This came through Indo-Tibetan Border Police and a certain bureaucrat who shall not go named at this time, but he sat on it. He just took that report and put it in his drawer for 2 weeks. So by the time Modi got seized of the situation, by I think middle of May, a lot of things had happened, and then Galwan and so on and so forth. But be that as it may, I think US sort of told us ahead of time, this is what China is up to, watch out. And then they didn't stop there. Mike Pompeo made multiple visits, and some of them he brought the defense secretary also along with him. A lot of stuff happened. And I mean, I'm not going to go into all that, but Quad got defined, in my opinion, during the Trump era. And then it was expected that the next president would carry forward. Is what is happening now? Are there chinks? Are we having 2+2 like bilaterals now instead of Quad? Is Quad now more or less not relevant? All these questions we are going to talk about today. And this is my opening statement, General Ravi Shankar. Please let me know what you see, how you saw this thing unfold from your side, say starting back from April 2020.
Well, I wouldn't put my bet on the fact that the whole thing, was because some bureaucrat put a file in the drawer before Mr. Modi got seized of the problem. There are more nuances to it. It's not as simple as that, if a bureaucrat puts a file in a drawer, the Prime Minister doesn't get to know. There are a lot of channels, and we have our own channels. And you must understand that we have a pretty strong network. Yeah, there's no doubt that the US administration did keep us informed. We have a great equation with them, and we're thankful to them, right? But we have to hand it to the Chinese that they surprised us. They had with the first mover advantage, and they couched it with other activities. But then, when we saw what the whole story was, we reacted. So we are not this thing, and of course, throughout the whole story, we had tremendous support from USA. Of course, I'll not blow it up, but I'll not play it down either. Oh, like you rightly said, China has done a lot to form the Quad, and it's pushed things in the right direction as far as India, Australia, Japan, and USA getting together. The Trump administration did a lot for the Quad. As per our estimate, uh, when the Biden administration was coming in, there were a few hiccups before the administration came in. I wouldn't say hiccups, there were a few apprehensions whether things will be the same or not. But as things have moved, you see, interests are permanent. Actors change. National interests are permanent. USA's interests in this region are permanent, so are India's interests and Chinese interests. So those interests have taken over. If anything, with the Biden administration coming in, uh, things have got speed. We've had a summit of the heads of state. I wouldn't say heads of state, the executives. We've had common op-eds coming out, and there's a clear strategy coming out. Besides strengthening the bilateral relationship, that's going on at its own pace. And this is between all four countries in the Quad. So things are going at two levels. One is the bilateral relationship between each country, country to country. That's strengthening. The second thing which is strengthening is the Quad platform itself. The third thing which is happening, and it has started in the recent past, is that France has come into the story. UK has come into the story because they have interests here, and France has got sovereign territory here. So the Indo-Pacific thing is going in way that the Quad platform is becoming important, because you had to host the extra-regional players from Europe, as also the ASEAN, the Quad Plus, which is New Zealand, Vietnam, South Korea, right, and then the ASEAN. So I think things are going pretty fast on the whole story. So this is my opening thing, and I'm actually looking forward to this discussion, because of late we've had some hiccups in the Indo-US relationship, which are best ironed out at the early stages, so that as we go along, we are more dependent on each other.
Yes, indeed. And in a different hangout, my panelist, my guest had said that he quoted Hillary Clinton. He said that differences among friends should not see the daylight.
Correct.
And so let's just keep that in mind, and then let's look at some of the things that you mentioned, sir. I just want to start from there. Now, you
Okay.
said that there is a Quad as a concept that is happening, that's moving on its own. Then there are the bilateral. Are these complementing? Are there some things out of sync here? How do you see it? And if whatever it is, you can explain why.
Oh, they're totally in sync. Unless, let me put it up front. Let me focus on the India-US equation, because everything stems from there, in my view. First and foremost, I'll take you back when President Obama had said that the India-US partnership would be the defining partnership of the 21st century. And President Biden reiterated this recently. So that's one important strand in this whole story. The second thing is something which is historical and anthropological. If you look in the world today, there are only three nations which can be isolated and self-dependent and still continue to grow: India, China, and USA. There is no fourth nation which is as large, which can be totally isolated and grow still. And this is our history. If you look at the USA, pre-World War, post First World War to Second World War, it was isolated and growing. China went through its isolation phase for nearly half a century around its cultural revolution. So did we, till the 90s. Three large countries. And today they are in some kind of relationship. It's not necessarily positive or negative. China and India never had a great relationship, right? And it was seeming to look up, and suddenly the inexplicable posture of the Chinese have ripped it apart. India and USA have developed a relationship over the past 20 years. And from a normal relationship with Mr. Jaswant Singh and James Baker at that point of time, the turn of the century started, it's developed into a strategic partnership, and it is going stronger. USA and China had a great relationship starting from the 70s, right? But then China, being what China is now that relationship has come under strain. And of course, in geopolitics, there are no permanent enemies, there are no permanent friends, there are only permanent interests. So there are the issue of shifting interests. You also see uh, at this when this say half a century back, USA was a fully risen nation. Today, China is rising fast, and slow and steady, India is also rising. So there has to be some equations which will come in. But I feel if you look at it holistically, it is this India-US relationship, which is going to be the cornerstone. And rightly, President Obama and President Biden called it the defining partnership of the 21st century. And in between, everyone, in fact, if you go back to President Bush, or for that matter, President Trump, they've all held this partnership in that line. Yeah, like I said, and like you rightly said, differences between friends shouldn't go into the daylight. That's what's happening, and that we can discuss those issues. Uh, yeah, over to you.
And I must place in context here that the the Indian Americans based in United States have had big roles to play in this in furthering of this U.S. India relations. Especially, I know of some who have contributed hugely towards that nuclear accord, because what was happening was suddenly the United States was suddenly taking on something that was fairly big in terms of like what it had done up to that point against India, and they needed to understand what Indian perspective was when they say something. What do they really mean? That reading between the lines. What is it that they will agree to? What is it that they will not agree to? And so on and so forth. And a lot of Indian Americans had a role to play. In fact, some of them have got awards now by the Indian government, like the Padma Bhushan, Padma Shri, and I'm not going to take names because
Yeah, that's fair.
it's just a fact that uh, many many of us feel that we want to do good by our Janma Bhumi and Karma Bhumi. So
Yeah,
that
I agree with you. I couldn't agree with you more. And in fact, in India, we are proud of all Indians or people of Indian origin who've gone and settled in US and are growing up the US system. We don't expect them to, unduly favor India. That's not required. They should, now that they've adopted the USA as their country, they should do well by that country. But then the understanding of India is better, and which will contribute to better US and Indian relationships. And this is not only with the nuclear accord, and with all the other foundational accords which we've had, whether it's BECA, Limova, or, the logistics accord, or whatever. I think the great role which is being played by Americans of Indian origin. And I would also put it this way: it doesn't matter to me whether they're Republican or Democrat in nature. I mean, that's how politics change. But fundamentally, they understand India better. So that's where I look up to them.
yes, indeed. And sir, I think this conversation would not be complete without talking a little bit about the S-400, because this is now suddenly taken a life of its own. And we saw that with Turkey, America first didn't do anything, they didn't do anything, they didn't do anything, and then finally they did act. And the excuse given, or the explanation given at that point, was that Turkey had close to 5,000 nuclear heads of NATO, because Turkey is still a NATO member,
Yeah, yeah,
and
remember.
therefore you can't just like that sanction them because of the fact that they have access to all these things. So whatever it is now, at least Turkey knows that dealing with Russia and getting S-400 has a price. Now, India hasn't been officially sanctioned, but US has been warning about this for a while. And I'm using this to place in context what happened recently when the US destroyer ship, flowed through the EEZ around Lakshadweep. Now, to put it in context, again, we talked about this on a different, with a different hangout, on a different hangout in PGRUS. The thing was that US has done it in the past. This is the first time they made a press release about it, for which India had to respond, and so on. So, how do you see this S-400? Is that going to be something that could kind of make the relationship, the closeness of US and India get, sort of like something in the middle? It's kind of stuck in the throat, Nilkant kind of thing. Or what are your thoughts, sir?
Well, you see, it's like this. First and foremost, For this relationship to succeed, both have to give up something to gain something together. What's happened, whether that FONOPS around Lakshadweep or this Kacha sanctions, which are for the S-400, it's a little out of character for a developing relationship. With Turkey, the equation was different. Turkey was a NATO member. There was a clear understanding with Turkey that they should follow NATO thing, and then yet they went in for S-400. We
Yes.
didn't have anything of that kind, right? We are not bound to USA. And when we undertook this S-400 deal, this was some time back, much before the present situation has evolved, much before Quad has come into play. And because these deals don't take over, they don't, they don't happen in a day, over a decade. The M777 deal which I did with the USA took me a decade. Same thing with the S-400, over a decade. So now when it has come to fruition, we can't go back and say, no, we don't want the S-400 and leave Russia and jump completely to the USA. And USA has to understand this. It leaves us defenseless with no alternative. That's not the best way to handle China for us. After all, for me, whether USA likes it or not, I have to still handle China. And they're not going to come and help me when I have to handle China face to face. One. Second, we can't let go of Russia, which has helped us, which has stood by us. Go back to 1971. It was thanks to Russia we could do what we did. At that time, USA was totally against us. Right? So USA cannot say today that you do this. And one. Number two, India is a country, like I told you, that's why I made this point, that we are one of these three countries are capable of being self-dependent and self-sufficient. We might not grow the way I become USA, but we can be independent. So, and we have had experience of it, isolated, whatever, call it what you want. So that independence, non-alignment, a certain leeway has to be given. And we are not ally of USA. All these factors have to be kept in mind. Whereas Turkey is an ally, NATO ally, right? Japan is an ally of USA. Australia is an ally. So is South Korea. Not us. Ours is a partnership. As much as USA is free to do what it wants to do, so are we. And we are bound by each other, so are we. But if you want to get an alliance going, or to go from this partnership to an alliance, if that is what you seek, and we have both the common interest in handling and containing China, right? Like you rightly said, you can't make your differences and see daylight. And I'll take it another step further. A lot of people from US lawmakers keep talking of human rights situation here, farm laws. Many of these celebrities from USA started supporting the farm laws, right? And all the problems which were there, and the agitation and all that. Well, we didn't do anything when the Capitol Hill was attacked, did we? I mean, there's a line why one should be very clear, where we shouldn't cross to start interfering in others' affairs. Maybe 10 years back you could do that with India, not anymore. The India of 10 years back or 15 years back and now is two different Indias. This is my view. You might like to have a different view about it.
No, I see where you're coming from, sir. Let me ask you the next question. I have a little bit of background now, so I'm going to ask the question and then mute myself right away.
All right. Okay.
Now, the evolving things in Pakistan and in Afghanistan, where the US has said that it is going to withdraw all its troops by 9/11. And what do you see? How do you see the equations change because of that?
Well, I think USA has taken a call to quit Afghanistan. Okay. And go away. So, I wouldn't say, on the surface it seems that they will have to depend on Pakistan to stabilize the situation in Afghanistan so that US homeland security is guaranteed. and have some kind of an arrangement with Iran, Russia and China also, and India also. But the history is the problem is not Afghanistan, and that's known for some strange reason, which many Americans have also, when I've discussed with them, they've said the problem is Pakistan. What are you doing about that? You can't do anything about it. You fed it. You made it into a total rogue state the way it is. I mean, everyone knows of. So leaving Afghanistan has got no value if you don't handle Pakistan. And USA has got itself into a situation where it can't handle Pakistan anymore. Because Pakistan has shifted its allegiance to China completely. Right? And to handle Pakistan, you have to come back to India. Unless India shows its, might, or call it what you want, whip hand, whatever you want, Pakistan will not be in line. Right? It is, one has to see this entire story from that point of view. Today, a lot of American homeland security issues, in my way of thinking, are tied to the way India behaves with Pakistan. And we also spoke in one of the last episodes, Pakistan itself is going down the chute. If today what's happening in Pakistan with this TLP, and if everything goes down, what happens to the nukes there? What happens to everything? What happens if a chap comes out with a suitcase and puts it out in Madison Square like chap tried earlier? Who's going to guarantee all that? Or rather, who's the nearest one who's going to prevent all that? India. So, right, who's going to put caution on Chinese entry, complete entry into Pakistan? India. If tomorrow things degenerate, where does America have a base? India. Forget China, and we're not talking of China. I'm just talking of the Middle East, and So I think we are interdependent partners. The dependency is both ways. I mean, if you look at it, maybe our military dependency is not as much as on America as America needs India today. That's my view. Maybe some people will think differently, but that's a hard fact.
Point well made, sir. So let's take one step further. Now, even if India were to get involved in Afghanistan in some way to try and kind of get some stability there, the fact that Iran has gone and signed a 25-year deal with China, then Iran is no longer hungry in terms of who needs to do the infrastructure for the Chabahar port. It also has a customer for its oil. So that route where India was trying to go from Chabahar into Kabul, that is probably not on their priority anymore. So even if India wants to, India can't do much in terms of like putting boots on the ground in Afghanistan. I'm just thinking loud, sir. What are your thoughts?
Look, first and foremost, India will never put boots on ground in Afghanistan. That's the worst thing India can do for anyone and everyone. Okay. The moment you do that, Pakistan will go up in flames. And secondly, we'll have unnecessary issues because then our reach is through Iran. I mean, just think for a moment. Why has Iran not put boots on ground in Afghanistan? They are neighbors, right? Why has Pakistan itself not gone in there? So don't be this thing. We need not put boots on ground, and Pakistan also will not put. No one will put boots on ground in Afghanistan now, right? But India has got tremendous links with Afghanistan, and that links will come useful. We have good links with Iran. America has to use that link, not get into a fight with Iran, right? And as far as China and Iran equations are concerned, they're transactional. So far, nothing strategic about it. And Iran is too, I would say, diffused nation. It has got its own aims and goals and its own thinking that they'll fall in with China. And we also have to understand that the Uyghurs are largely Shia. So there will be a fracture there sooner or later, right? So it's not going to be that easy. It's that equation I will not put too much. And the way I look at it, if China gets into Afghanistan, best thing. Then the Chinese will replace Americans there and get sucked in. I don't think they'll go in that fast. So Afghanistan will get be its own cauldron. And in my view, as of today, the way things are going, after September, by December, there might be a civil war there. I mean, it's inevitable. You can't stop it. Neither can Pakistan stop it, nor can Iran stop it, nor China, nor USA, nor India, nor Russia.
So you'll have the same warlords like what we saw
Yeah,
in
yeah.
post 9/11.
Yeah, we are going. Yeah. Whoever. Haqqani group,
Right.
Afghan Taliban. When Afghan Taliban goes berserk, TTP will go berserk, Pakistan will go get destabilized. Then the Durand line politics will start. And there's latest story of TLP which has started. So Pakistan also will be in a destabilized state. There is going to be, if I put it crudely, Bugger's model. On the other end of that is Iraq and Iran with their own problems, right? And now with Russia have coming down into Ukraine. So the western end of Afghanistan has got its own issues. So the eastern end of this AFPAC region is India, which is stable. So again, the pivot in this entire area is coming down to India.
Well, thanks for explaining that stuff with a lot of perspective, sir. And let's see how things go. We may be back again to talk about this in 2 to 3 weeks' time, or as and when it's warranted.
Yeah.
But it was always a pleasure to have you on our channel, sir. Thank you very much, and namaskar.
Namaskar.